Ever since we were kids, we've been told the story of Rome as a perfect epic. We've heard about marble heroes, wise emperors, a civilization that brought light to the ancient world. But what if much of what we believe about Rome was a carefully crafted lie? For centuries, the winners wrote history, and Rome was the biggest winner of them all. It manipulated stories, erased names, invented deeds, and turned villains into heroes. Today, on Amazing Stories, you'll discover the 25 biggest lies Rome made us believe. Lies that have changed our view of the past, and maybe even the present. Because sometimes, history wasn't what happened, but what they wanted us to believe. This changed the world so much, with the most influential empire in human history, that it was unavoidable for endless legends, myths, or just plain lies to pop up about every part of its existence among its realities, many of which were cruel, and others that were about bringing civilization. As the top power of its time, these lies and mistakes are about their way of life, their military strength, their cleanliness, and their most famous people, like the gladiators. They're also about the places they lived, the rituals they followed, and how they ate and celebrated. In this video, we've gathered 25 lies about ancient Rome that we started hearing since elementary school, to find out what Republican and Imperial Rome was really like. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with our content. Number 1, the vomitorium. It was a place to throw up. Even today, there's this wrong idea that the Roman vomitorium, which we call a vomitory in English, was a room next to banquet halls. People thought that rich Romans would go there to throw up after eating too much, just to make space and keep eating. But actually, the Latin word vomitorium means a place for things to come out, but not food. It was for people. A vomitorium was a hallway behind or under the seats of a stadium or amphitheater. It was how people could quickly leave after a show. These were super important in the Colosseum, especially since that famous Roman amphitheater could hold an estimated 50 to 70,000 people. The hallways where theater actors would enter and exit the stage without being seen by the audience were also called vomitoria. The word vomitorium is where we get the English word vomit and the Italian vomitare from, but those words are about throwing up what's in your stomach from your mouth. Number 2, gladiators were slim and muscular. The common idea of a Roman gladiator is a man with a slim and muscular body, achieved after hours of training, fighting, and a proper diet. In 1993, a gladiator cemetery was found, and the bone structure of their bodies was compared to that of other ordinary men who were thought to have never fought in the arenas. These studies showed that gladiators' diets were very rich in carbs and low in protein compared to non-fighters. Also, the Dr. Claudius Galen said that gladiators mainly ate barley pudding and bean soup. This diet made sense for storing energy, and it's been suggested that gladiators might have been a bit heavy, with a good layer of fat under their skin that protected them from cuts from their opponents. It's even been said that this fullness allowed them to keep fighting, even when bleeding, for longer, to the delight of the crowd. Number 3, the salute linked to fascism actually started in ancient Rome. The straight-arm salute, used by followers of Benito Mussolini's regime in Italy, by members of the National Socialist Party during Germany's Third Reich, and by supporters of the Spanish Falange, has been connected to ancient Rome and is even called the Roman salute. But there are no historical records that show this salute was used in ancient Rome. The idea for this myth might have come from the 1774 painting, The Oath of the Horatii, by the French artist Jacques-Louis David, which was inspired by the supposed oath made by the twin Horatii brothers in the 6th century BC, before their fight with the Curiati twins to decide who would win the war between Rome and Alba Longa. This supposed Roman salute later showed up in silent and talking movies, before it was adopted in Italy and Germany. Number Number 4. Nero burned Rome. In his 2019 book, Fake News of Ancient Rome, Deceptions, Propaganda, and Lies from 2,000 Years Ago, the Spanish archaeologist and popularizer Nestor F. Marquez examines several falsehoods about ancient Rome, spread by the Romans themselves, or that became early distortions in collective memory, lasting through time. Since the 1st century AD, it's been believed that Emperor Nero burned Rome to blame Christians and justify persecuting them. But this is just a suspicion, as there are no historical sources to back it up. According to historical accounts, the fire started on the night of July 18th to 19th, 64 AD, and destroyed 10 out of Rome's 14 districts, including important places like the Temple of Jupiter and the House of the Vestal Virgins. Even though there's no proof of how the fire started, Christian history points to this event as the start of the first persecution of Christians. This is because Nero blamed them for the fire, and many followers of Christ were executed because of it. Number 5. The Bacchanalia. The Bacchanalia were popular festivals celebrated in Rome in honor of the god Bacchus. Funded with private money, they are believed to have arrived in Rome about 200 years before Christ from Magna Graecia, and very little is known about their rituals. The main source of information about the festivals is Livia, who wrote 2 centuries after the events and described them in a scandalous and very colourful way. Livia mentions frenzied ceremonies, violent sexual initiations of people of both sexes and all social classes and ages while drinking excessively. The rites were organized by priestesses called Bacchante. According to the chronicler, the Bacchanalia was celebrated in secret, and at first only women participated, who gathered in the forest of Simila near the Aventine Hill during the first full moon of January and the 1st of March, as well as the 16th and 17th days of March. Later, the celebration extended to men and took place 5 times a month. Many authors doubt Livy's account, at least in its more scandalous details, like the sexual perversions, and there is certainly no account from the same period in which the Bacchanalia took place. Number 6. The rumors about Livia. Some Roman historians say that Livia might have played a part in the deaths of her husband Augustus and his heirs, because she wanted her son Tiberius to become emperor, but it's hard to tell if these are true stories or just gossip. Livia Drusilla was born on January 30th, 58 BC, and history shows her as the loyal and powerful wife of Caesar Augustus and his main advisor in state matters. It's said that her son Tiberius killed many rivals, including Marcus Claudius Marcellus, Gaius and Lucius Caesar, Agrippa Postumus and Germanicus, maybe with her mother's help or knowledge. Livia built a public image that made her seem perfect in her female qualities, like a mother figure and finally like a goddess who stood for goodness. However, the historian Dio Cassius wrote that a rumor spread that when Marcellus, Augustus's nephew, died in 23 BC, it wasn't from natural causes and that Livia was behind it, but there's no proof that these rumors are true. The honesty of Septimius Severus. Septimius Severus, Roman emperor between 193 and 211 AD, and the founder of the Severan dynasty, was really popular with the people. Why? Because he brought back good morals after the bad years of Commodus's rule. He also managed to stop the corruption that had spread everywhere. However, he wasn't completely free from corruption himself. A broken stone tablet found by Bulgarian researchers shows this. It's a copy of a letter where the emperor and his sons thanked the city of Nicopolis at Istrum for their financial help. According to archaeology in Bulgaria, the text avoids calling the payment a bribe. It also says that this bribe was a gift of 700,000 denarii, which was the standard Roman silver coin until the second half of the 1st century AD. In the inscription, Septimius Severus says, "I have accepted this money given by well-meaning people." That amount would be worth several $1,000,000 today. Number 8. The Roman Empire fell in the year 76 of the Common Era. Often when people talk about the Roman Empire, they point to the year 476 AD as the year it fell. However, that was the year the Western Roman Empire fell, but the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire lasted for another 1,000 years, until the middle of the 15th century. In the year 476, the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed by the Germanic leader, Odoacer. But the Eastern Empire, based in Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul in Turkey, continued to exist until the city fell to the Ottomans in 1453. Odoacer was a general from the Germanic tribe of the Heruli, born in Pannonia, Central Europe, who was serving in the Western Roman army when he removed Romulus Augustulus and became the de facto ruler of Italy. This moment is seen as the end of the Ancient Age and the beginning of the Middle Ages. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 brought an end to the Roman Empire and was a major turning point in history as it led to the Islamization of Turkey. Togas were common and always white. In the famous epic poem The Aeneid, written by the poet Virgil in the last third of the 1st century BC, the author refers to his Roman contemporaries as masters of the world and people of the toga, and many images of ancient Romans show them dressed in a long toga, often white, that covered them from the shoulders almost to their feet. However, the design and color of togas were part of a complex clothing ceremony for ancient Romans. Even though any citizen could wear a plain, undyed wool toga, clothes of other colors like red and purple, as well as those designed with stripes and other special patterns, were linked to a certain social standing in society. Over time, the toga became a ceremonial piece of clothing that the average Roman citizen rarely wore. The long-lasting connection between Rome and the toga might be because Virgil wrote the Aeneid when Augustus, the first Roman emperor, asked him to. Under Augustus, all citizens doing business in the forum or watching plays at the theatre had to wear a toga to show they were different from non-citizens and to highlight their social class. The white toga with a purple border was only for senators, high-ranking officials, and young people under 16. Number 10. Gladiator fights were always deadly. Movies have really hyped up the brutality and violence of gladiator fights, from Ben-Hur to Gladiator, making it seem like they were almost always fatal. But the truth was probably quite different. Now, this doesn't mean arena battles weren't dangerous or that fighters didn't die, but historians believe the risk to life and limb wasn't as extreme as movies show. This was partly because trained gladiators were really valuable and famous, and the entertainment business in ancient Rome was huge. It just wouldn't make sense for their main stars to be dying all the time. There were about 100 gladiator schools built across the Roman Empire, and the top fighters were huge crowd favorites, just like big sports stars and singers are today. Number 11. The marble statues of ancient Rome were white. Even though many Roman statues were made of pure white marble, not all of them looked that way. When many of these old treasures from classic times were found again during the Renaissance, they had been buried for over 1,000 years and had lost their original decorations. So, the weather had mostly washed away the bright decorations, known as polychromy. This meant the statues were painted with shiny gold and silver colors and had inlays. Some sculptures have kept their original colors, like the equestrian statue called the Persian Horseman from 490 BC. It was found with enough red, blue, green, yellow, and brown paint. These colors allowed experts to recreate the horseman's fancy and colorful clothing. Restoring statues like this to their original colors has given researchers new ideas about the style and feelings of Roman artists and Roman culture in general. Number 12. Romans had a high standard of hygiene. Ancient Rome is famous for its amazing villas and grand buildings and monuments, which made people think they kept things really clean. This might have been true for the tiny group of rich people, but most Romans lived in shaky buildings, in apartments with really bad sanitation. Usually, these homes didn't have toilets or running water. Trash and poop were thrown into the streets, with the only rule being that it shouldn't fall on people walking by. If a traveler ended up with a pile of poop on their head, the person who did it, if caught, had to pay a fine. The trash in the streets often caused traffic jams and made the air smell really bad. And to make things worse, cats and dogs would join in the feast. To get clean, Romans went to public baths, as long as they had money to pay for them. Number 13. Roman soldiers always fought in red tunics. Ancient Roman art almost always shows Roman legionaries in uniforms where the color red stands out. Red was the most important color for the Romans, at least in a military sense. It was the shade that symbolized Mars, the god of war, and the mythical father of the twins Romulus and Remus, who founded Rome according to legend. So, red had great importance in the public and military life of the Romans, who saw themselves as a warrior people descended from Mars. On battlefields, Romans wore a red tunic under their armor. This symbolized strength and the blood they were willing to spill and make their enemies spill in pursuit of victory. Without a doubt, the tight line of a Roman legion, with its striking red color, was intimidating and had a psychological effect on their opponents. They saw their rivals as stronger and braver. Beyond this, there's no real proof that the color red was the only color used for Roman legionaries' clothing. Number 14. Romans didn't think much of their doctors. Romans usually treated their health problems with simple remedies, and Cato the Elder wrote that the head of the household was expected to know enough to take care of his family's aches and pains. The first doctors in ancient Rome were often Greek slaves, because it wasn't common for Roman citizens to work in this profession. However, there were plenty of quacks, clueless healers, and magicians. Many Romans would go to doctors with questionable skills, who offered mysterious ointments, elixirs, or prayed to the gods for the patient's health. In his book, Natural History, Pliny the Elder gives a vivid description of a case, hence those sad arguments, those bedside consultations, where no one thinks it's a good idea to agree with someone else, so they don't look like they're less important. This also led to that spooky inscription you can read on a tomb. It was the crowd of doctors that killed me. Number 15. Roman women had a high degree of emancipation. The fame achieved by several Roman women, such as Livia Drusilla, wife of Augustus and mother of Tiberius, Agrippina the Elder, mother of Caligula, and Agrippina the Younger, daughter of the former, wife of Claudius and mother of Nero, might lead one to think that women in ancient Rome enjoyed a high level of freedom. In reality, as was the case in almost all ancient cultures, Roman women were very much under the control of men. They couldn't vote in assemblies or elections, nor hold public office, except for a few very specific roles like priestesses. In the year 46 AD, the Roman Senate passed the Senatus Consultum Banum law, which forbade women from acting as guarantors or taking on obligations on their own behalf. If her father died and she wasn't under the authority of a husband, a Roman woman had to remain under the care of a guardian for the rest of her life. Number 19. The rowers on Roman warships were slaves. A lot of the mistakes and wrong ideas we have about ancient Rome come from movies. This is because some directors like to make historical facts more dramatic just to make their movies sell better. One example of this is a famous scene from the movie Ben-Hur, where slaves are whipped to make them row a ship super fast. This scene really impressed a lot of people, and they even started to believe that this was a normal thing in ancient Rome. But Roman generals didn't actually use slaves to power their ships. Instead, they used professional rowers who were well trained and paid good money, especially during wartime. Using slaves for this job happened only sometimes, and both Augustus and Pompey used enslaved people on their ships when they really had to. Number 20, Caligula was a crazy, hopeless monster. Caligula has gone down in history as the ultimate example of the craziest and most hopeless ruler ever. His record shows he was unbalanced, harsh, incestuous, incompetent, and a mocker, which led to myths and wrong ideas about how he acted as emperor, including the threat to make his favorite horse a senator. Most of what we know about Caligula comes from rumors spread by his enemies back then, and over the centuries he's been shown as an increasingly disturbed person. However, modern historians who have looked back at Caligula's life have given a new twist to many of the main events. For example, the story about him wanting to dress his horse in a senator's toga was probably a clever way to make fun of the senators he disliked the most. According to Canadian scholar Anthony Barrett in his book, Caligula, the Corruption of Power, Agrippina the elder's son wasn't crazy or especially evil. He was simply a young man who lacked experience and leadership. Number 21. While Rome burned, Nero played his lyre. A legend says that while fire destroyed a large part of Rome in July of 64, leaving tens of thousands of Romans homeless, Emperor Nero was busy in his palace playing the lyre. However, other sources say that while the city was burning, Nero was at his villa in Antium, which is about 35 miles from Rome. This makes sense because, Roman important people often left the city during summer to find cooler places. It seems when he found out about the fire, he rushed back to Rome to help organize the rescue efforts. The story about Nero playing the lyre was just a rumor with no real proof, probably spread by his enemies who wanted to make him look worse than he was. Number 22, Rome grew strong because of its military power and its democratic ideas. There's a common belief that Rome's amazing growth during the Republic era was mostly because of its powerful and well-managed military and its democratic ideas, which were pretty new back then. That's true, but only partly, because this idea is missing a key part that was super important for Rome to become strong: how they treated the people they beat in wars. Rome didn't treat the people they conquered like forever enemies to use up until nothing was left. Instead, they saw them as temporary enemies who, once defeated, became part of their republic and empire with citizen rights. Number 23, Romans wore togas every day. Since Romans are so closely linked with togas, you might think they wore this clothing all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But for many, the toga was like what a tuxedo is today, an outfit for very special events. In fact, many Romans never even got to see what they looked like in their togas because one was only put on them for their burial. For most of Rome's history, togas weren't really considered everyday clothes. Number 24, Caesar's last words were "Et tu, Brute." There are different stories about Julius Caesar's last words when he was killed on March 15, 43 BC. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, who was born 114 years after the killing, eyewitnesses said Caesar's last words were, "Even you, my son," referring to Marcus Junius Brutus, the son of Servilia, his longtime lover. However, both Suetonius and his colleague Plutarch believed that Caesar didn't say anything when he was assassinated. The phrase "Et tu, Brute," which means "and you, Brutus," was something Shakespeare made up. Number 25, the Romans had a British accent. The idea that Romans spoke with an English accent was made popular by classic films like Quo Vadis in 1951 and Ben-Hur in 1959. A generation later, the TV series I, Claudius helped to strengthen this stereotype. In reality, Romans spoke many languages and with various accents, including Vulgar Latin, which was the main language. It's said that Emperor Hadrian, who was from Spain, caused laughter during his first speech in the Senate because of his accent. We hope this video was helpful to you. If you have anything to add, please share it with us in the comments section. Until the next amazing stories.